All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into this classic business book, The Personal MBA.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, it's been recommended by everybody, so I'm super excited to finally get into it.
Yeah, it's packed with really practical advice, you know? You can apply it to pretty much anything, really.
Yeah, definitely. It's not just for business owners or entrepreneurs or anything,
Exactly.
There's a lot in here for anybody who wants to understand how the world works, even just negotiating a better price on something you're buying.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So I guess, where should we even start with this thing? It's pretty dense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that really struck me about this book was its emphasis on value.
Okay, yeah, value. What makes something valuable?
Exactly. What makes people willing to pay for something.
Right.
And the book actually breaks down 12 different forms of economic value.
Whoa, okay. Can you give us a few examples?
Sure. So some of them are pretty obvious, right? Products and services.
Right.
But then you get into some more interesting categories shared resource, for example.
Shared resource, what's that?
So that's businesses that provide access to something that people share, think about gyms.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or co-working spaces, even libraries.
Right.
They're not selling a tangible product, but they're providing access to something valuable that people share.
Makes sense. So what's another one?
Another interesting one is audience aggregation.
Audience aggregation. That sounds fancy.
It's basically how influencers and media companies make money.
Oh, okay.
They're not selling a product, but they're selling access to a specific audience.
That's pretty smart.
Right. And then there's also insurance.
Insurance, okay.
Which is, it's not just about paying for coverage. It's fundamentally about transferring risk.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. So understanding these different forms of value can really help you think about how to create something that people will actually want to pay for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, how do you know what people will actually value enough to pay for it?
Well, that brings us to the idea of perceived value.
Perceived value.
Yeah, it's not just about the inherent value of what you're offering, but how valuable your customers perceive it to be.
Oh, okay. So it's all about marketing and branding and psychology, right?
Exactly. It's about how you position your product or service in the minds of your customers.
So a really good example of this is those 5-finger shoes.
The ones that look like gloves for your feet.
Exactly. Objectively, they're kind of weird looking.
Right.
But people love them.
They do. Why? Well, because the company that makes them, they really nailed their perceived value.
Okay, how so?
They tapped into this desire for a more natural, barefoot-like running experience.
Okay.
Even if the aesthetic is, a little bit out there.
Yeah, it's definitely a polarizing look.
It is. But it works for them.
Yeah, it totally does.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you figure out what truly drives perceived value for your customers?
Well, the book recommends a technique called relative importance testing.
Relative importance testing.
Yeah, which sounds kind of complicated, but it's basically about testing different features and benefits and aspects of your product or service.
Oh, okay.
To see what resonates most with your target audience.
So you're figuring out what people actually care about.
Exactly.
And then you can focus on those things.
Exactly. And that can save you so much time and energy, because you're not wasting your effort on things that don't really matter to your customers.
That's a really good point. I think that actually applies to way more than just business.
Oh, absolutely.
Anytime you're trying to create something or get someone to do something,
Yeah.
It's all about understanding what they value. Okay, that's a great point. Now, the book also talks about these things called critically important assumptions.
CAS.
Yeah, CIAs.
Yeah, these are the make or break assumptions that your entire business or project rests upon.
Okay. So, what are some examples of CIS?
Well, it could be anything, really. For example, let's say you're starting a new restaurant.
Okay.
A CIA might be that there's enough demand in your area for the type of food you're serving.
Right.
Or that you can find a location that's both affordable and in a good spot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or that you can hire qualified staff.
Okay.
So identifying your CIAs is crucial because it forces you to confront potential weaknesses or blind spots in your thinking.
Right. You got to make sure you're not just assuming things are going to work out.
Exactly. You have to validate those assumptions.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we should probably like pause here for a second and let our listeners kind of think about their own CIAs.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because, I mean, this could be really helpful for anyone, whether you're working on a business or a project or like even just a personal goal.
Absolutely.
So take a minute, think about it. We'll be right back to dive into some more marketing magic.
Sounds good. So yeah, give those CIAs some thought. It can be really helpful to bring those assumptions to the surface,
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's circle back to those five-finger shoes.
Oh, yeah. Those things.
Because they're such a good example of like how to really nail your marketing,
Absolutely. They really understood their probable purchaser.
Probable purchaser.
Yeah, that's the person who's like most likely to buy your product,
Right. Okay.
And the book makes a good point that you shouldn't try to like appeal to everybody,
Yeah, you can't please everyone.
Exactly. You got to focus your marketing on the people who are actually going to be interested in what you're selling.
Right. And in the case of Five Fingers, that was like runners who wanted a more natural barefoot experience.
Right. Exactly. They really honed in on that niche.
And it worked.
Yeah. I mean, they're not for everyone, but the people who love them really love them.
Right. And I think that's a good lesson for anyone, Like, don't be afraid to be different.
Absolutely. Embrace your quirks.
Yeah. Okay, so the book also talks about this idea of visualization in marketing.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
So what exactly is that?
It's basically about helping potential customers see themselves like actually using and benefiting from your product or service.
Okay.
Like think about Apple.
Okay, yeah.
They do this really well in their stores.
Yeah, they totally
So you walk in and you can like play with the products,
Right.
experience the interface.
Right before you buy it.
Exactly. And that helps you imagine yourself like actually using that product in your daily life.
So smart. Okay, let's shift gears for a bit. I want to talk about how to work smarter, not harder.
Oh, yeah, that's something we can all relate to.
Totally. And the book dives into some really interesting concepts here. Like, one of the things that stood out to me was this idea of monoidealism.
Monoidealism?
Yeah, it's basically the art of like focusing on one thing at a time.
Oh, okay.
Which I know sounds counterintuitive in our like multitasking obsessed world, but
right, we're always told to do more, be more, right?
Totally. But research actually shows that like when we try to do too many things at once, we actually end up being less efficient overall.
We're spreading ourselves too thin.
Exactly. I'm so bad at this. I'm like the queen of multitasking.
Oh, me too.
And it's probably why my to-do list never seems to get any shorter,
It's a constant struggle.
But I've been trying to be better about like really focusing on one task at a time, and it actually does make a big difference.
It's about prioritizing and focusing your energy.
Exactly. And the book talks about creating like a guiding structure to help minimize distractions.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Like setting aside dedicated time for specific tasks, turning off notifications, decluttering your workspace.
Yeah, all those little things that can make a big difference.
Totally. Noise-canceling headphones are my best friend.
Oh, they're lifesavers. But it's not just about those external distractions, right?
Right.
The book goes deeper into like willpower and decision-making. Have you ever heard of decision fatigue?
Oh, yeah. I feel like I experience that all the time.
Me too.
Like, what is it exactly?
So it's the idea that as the day goes on, your brain gets tired from making, all these decisions.
Right, right.
And so you start making worse choices.
So like by 8 p.m., I'm just ordering pizza again because I don't have the energy to decide what to cook.
That's a perfect example.
I always thought that was just laziness, but maybe it's my brain being exhausted.
Could be both.
Yeah.
But yeah, decision fatigue is a real thing. And the book also talks about this thing called loss aversion.
Loss aversion.
Yeah, it's basically the idea that people are more afraid of losing money than they are excited about gaining the same amount.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
It's like that feeling of like, oh man, I just lost $10.
Oh, yeah.
That feels way worse than the feeling of finding $10 on the street.
So true. We are definitely wired to avoid pain.
Exactly. And understanding these like cognitive biases can help us make better decisions in business and in life,
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, I want to talk about working with other people.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Exactly. And one of the most valuable concepts in the book is this idea of comparative advantage.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
So, like, what does that mean?
So basically, even if you're good at everything, it's still more efficient to focus on your strengths and delegate tasks to other people who excel in their areas of expertise.
Okay, yeah.
So imagine, like, you're a master chef who also happens to be amazing at washing dishes.
Okay.
But you can either spend an hour whipping up like an incredible meal,
Right.
or you can spend an hour scrubbing pots and pans.
Okay. Yeah. I see where you're going with this.
Right. So even though you're technically capable of doing both. Yeah.
Focusing on your core strength, in this case, cooking, and letting someone else handle the dishes, even if they might not do it exactly as you would, is more efficient.
Right, because your time is better spent doing what you're best at.
Exactly. It's about like maximizing everyone's talents.
Yeah.
And working together to achieve like the best possible outcome.
Teamwork. Okay, so when it comes to leadership, the book highlights this distinction between like influence and compulsion.
Oh yeah, that's important.
So like, what's the difference?
Well, influence is about inspiring people to follow you willingly,
Okay.
whereas compulsion is about like forcing them through authority or pressure.
Okay. Yeah.
So think about it. Like, do you work harder for a boss who motivates you or a boss who's constantly like breathing down your neck?
Definitely motivation. No one likes to feel micromanaged.
Exactly. So it's about creating an environment where people feel valued and respected, and they want to contribute their best work. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So are there any specific strategies from the book that we can use to be more like influential leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of great advice in there. Why don't we dive into some of those strategies now?
Okay, sounds good.
It's all about, creating that positive and supportive environment.
Right, where people feel like they can actually like thrive.
Exactly. Okay, so should we maybe like recap some of the key takeaways from our deep dive into the personal MBA?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we started by talking about the 5 factors that define a successful business.
Right. Creating value, meeting customer demand, making transactions happen.
Delivering that value effectively.
And making enough profit to keep the whole thing going.
Yeah, those are the essential...
The foundational pieces, yeah.
Yeah, and then we got into those 12 forms of economic value.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
That was like mind-blowing for me.
Yeah, it really makes you think outside the box.
It does. Like, it's not just about selling a physical product or a service.
Right. There are so many other ways to create value.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, we talked about the importance of perceived value.
Oh, yeah. That's key.
Like, it's not just about the actual value of something, but like how valuable your customer thinks it is.
Right. Perception is everything.
It really is. And we talked about some pretty cool strategies for like influencing that perception.
Like, using visualization and really understanding your target customer.
Right. And let's not forget about monoidealism.
Focusing on one thing at a time.
Yes. That has been a game changer for me.
It's a simple concept, but it's so powerful.
It really is. And, creating those guiding structures to like minimize distractions.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial.
So important. Okay. And then finally, we talked about the difference between influence and compulsion when it comes to like leadership.
Right. Leading by inspiration, not by force.
Exactly. Because ultimately, people are way more likely to like do their best work when they feel, motivated and respected.
Absolutely. And that's really what this whole book is about. It's about empowering people to like achieve their full potential.
That's a great way to put it. So if you could like leave our listeners with just one final thought from our deep dive into the personal MBA.
Oh, that's a tough one. But I think the most important thing is this. The most important factor in achieving business success is your ability to learn and adapt.
Yeah, that's so true.
So this book gives you a framework,
A foundation.
Yeah, a foundation. But your commitment to like ongoing learning is what will ultimately determine how far you go.
Beautifully said. So there you have it. Your crash course in business fundamentals inspired by the personal MBA. Be sure to check out the show notes for like links to some bonus resources. And as always, let us know what resonated with you from this deep dive.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving.
Keep diving.